You might have noticed in your chairs, about every other chair, there was a piece of paper. Anyone get that? If you do, go ahead and break that out. We're going to be using that throughout this. Normally, we have someone stand up here and just talk to you. But I think this week I'm going to give you a little bit, I want to try something different and see how this works. I'm going to give you a little bit of background, and then I'm going to ask you to turn to your neighbors and share stories together. So let me give you a couple bullet points that you can follow along on the top part. It's all about the triangle of relationships. And if you don't have one, Sean, raise your hand. Sean has a few extra copies that we can give out. Or if you don't have one near your neighbor. Yeah, if your neighbor has one, look off for them. She'll be working together. Today's readings address something that I think is extremely central to our faith. Oftentimes, when I'm trying to write a sermon, I go, what am I going to do with this combination of a curveball, a slider, and a changeup in the middle of a fastball? Any of those of you who know baseball references? Or how am I going to pull out what Tom Brady did at the Super Bowl at the last minute? Fortunately, this week, it was a very easy selection. It's a very central core tenet to every reading that we have this week. And that is, community is necessary, and community is triangular. Anybody want to hazard a guess what I mean by community is triangular? With God and with each other, yes. When I grew up, it was emphasized that I needed to have my own personal relationship with Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior, being a good Baptist that I was. And there's importance to having one's own personal connection to the divine, and being that we are good Episcopalians, that we're the both and instead of the either or, you have both relationship individually with God and relationship together, which oftentimes the two are separated in the eyes of the world. Either it's about your personal relationship with God, or we don't need religion, we can just be part of one another. And that's not necessarily untrue, but for us as Christians, it's really about the triangle of connecting with God together. Now, we're reading Leviticus, which is a set of holy orders. What does it mean to be holy? Sanctified? What does sanctified mean?
Are we saying holy H-O-L-Y or W-H-O-L?
H-O-L-Y. Blessed? Sanctified? What else? To be filled with the Spirit. Okay. What else? Be in a right relationship with God. And there's one more that's applied to this, which means set apart. Holy other. In a culture right now where the idea of caring for people outside of yourself and your own group, our culture is very individualistic. So the idea that we are called to be in a relationship, that the communal aspect of how we be in the world is central, is somewhat countercultural, therefore set apart. So there's holiness to who we are as Episcopalians, because we are about coming together rather than just being individuals. The fact that we have people of different religious and political opinions, different cultural backgrounds, coming to the table and to the font is a really sacred thing. Another puzzle piece is that justice and dignity of every human being has no conditions. Both Jesus and the reading from Leviticus are very particular in that we should not cut ourselves off from other people, whether they are our own kinsfolk, whether they are aliens in our land, whether they are our friend, or whether they are our enemy. That is a tall order. And I think that part of the reason that God gives us taller orders than we can achieve on our own is because it pushes us into the triangle of relationship. Although relationship is triangular, there is no room for triangulation. Anybody know what that word means, triangulation? 2 against 1 is one way of looking at it. Or Annette, so here's an example. Annette, could you just tell Audrey what a pain in the neck she is to work for? I don't want to tell her myself, so could you just tell her for me? Exactly. I'm kidding, by the way. No, in all honesty, I like working with you. Sit back down. Please, man, boss. Leviticus points out to us that it is necessary that when we have conflict, don't hold it in. Don't go to somebody else. Go to the person with whom you have a conflict. There's another part of the Sermon on the Mount that Jesus says, if you come to the temple to offer sacrifice to God, or you come to church to receive Eucharist, and then you realize, I am not at peace with one of my sisters or brothers, Jesus says, wait, leave your sacrifice, go be reconciled, then come back and offer your sacrifice to God, which ties together the fact that our relationship with God and our relationship with one another are integrally woven, and that the prime directive of what we are about is love. Now, contrary to popular Christian belief, when Jesus said, you've heard it said X, but I say Y, is not Jesus dismissing the commandment. Jesus is being a good rabbi. In rabbinical flourish, that happens a lot. Jesus' continuing evolution of thought. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth was a very humanitarian alternative to the common understanding of their day. Who understands what blood revenge was? If say this group of people and this group of people, one person hurts a person from this group has the right to come and hurt all of you because of one person's actions. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth changes that to say, no, the whole group should not be punished for one person's mistake. So whatever they did to this group, to this person, is done to that person, and that's it. Jesus is extending that compassion into love that person, heal that person, pray for them. As example of this, he gives, if someone asks you to carry their pack for a mile, carry it 2 miles. Do you know what the context of that was? Roman soldiers were allowed to ask civilians to carry their pack for a mile. And they would gloat over people to do this. To carry it a second mile shames a Roman soldier and would get that person in trouble with their superiors. Turning the other cheek is not about being a doormat. Turning the other cheek is when someone backhands you, not only are they harming you, they are smacking you as an inferior. To turn the other cheek means they either have to slap you with the left hand, which they're not supposed to do. Thankfully, we live now because I'm a lefty. Or if they were to slap the other cheek, they would have to slap you with the front of their hand, which meant they slapped you as an equal. So it was subversion and nonviolent protest. If they asked for your cloak, give them your tunic as well. You had 2 items of clothing in the ancient world, your tunic and your cloak. If they ask for your cloak when they don't need it, give them your tunic as well, makes you naked. Now, in our culture, being naked is shameful for the person who's naked. But back then, the person who perceived other people's nakedness was the one who was shamed. It was a way of pushing back on people taking advantage of other people. And the third point, the statement, be perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect. Perfect does not mean flawless. I grew up thinking that perfect meant flawless, and I was a self-condemning perfectionist. Anybody ever done that before? You don't have to raise your hands, but if you want to, you can. The word does not mean flawless, it means complete. So be complete as your Father in heaven is complete, which is not flawless. We are going to screw up in community. We are going to screw up and make mistakes. But if we love one another and we open that door to relationship, we are able to go deeper in our relationships and as a community. And as we move forward in the coming months in our search for a new rector, and as we do self-examination as a community, that's an important puzzle piece, and also to get to know one another, which brings us to the second half of today's sermon time. You'll notice that I have a list of discussion questions. What I want you to do is take a moment and in silence and sit with those questions. And when I tell you go, turn to your neighbor and discuss those questions together. Take a moment in silence. We'll come back to that. Yeah, we'll come back to that. Yeah. Okay, let's wrap up your stories. Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to hear the chatter. That makes me happy that this is a good thing. Okay. I wish we had more time to talk, and we do. It's called coffee hour next door. But what I want to do is take a moment and hear a few of the stories from you, those of you who wish to share. Raise your hand and say your story. And for simplicity's sake, I'll have you share it, and I'll paraphrase it back on the microphone so people can hear it. But I want to hear like a couple of the stories you heard. So does anyone want to share? Yep. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Good deal. She was talking about the Women's March recently in Walnut Creek, how it gave a sense of being able to speak one's mind in a non-violent and peaceful way. Thank you. What else? Mm-hmm.
Well, my experience of what I think solidified my Christianity and gave me a really good base was I went to SEAL.
Mm.
And Carol Glass was my mentor. And that really built our relationship. It was a very open, very comfortable place to be. And I always appreciate that. That was a real gift to me, to help me in my...
Excellent. So you went to Cursillo, and if you don't know what that is, ask around. There are plenty of people here who have done it, and it's a phenomenal program. I haven't done it yet myself, but I've heard nothing but good things about it. So an intimate weekend experience, really diving into God with other people, built relationships for you in a really comfortable and engaging way. Thank you. Who else? Anybody? Gigi? I'll paraphrase for her. That's powerful. Gigi was saying when we held the memorial service for her late husband, Jim, seeing the support that was given to her here and also the inspiration of his powerful, strong faith bolstered her when he was still alive and continues to bolster her now. That intimacy and support, thank you. That's powerful. One more? Mm-hmm.
And how currently many folks are actually being unhealthy, finding it need to be flawless, and how being complete is a much more
Pointing out the difficulties of how the concept of flawlessness makes for a very unhealthy life, and how completeness, it sounds like it's similar for you. I know for me, flawless means you have to reach, and complete means you just rest in being complete. Thank you for sharing that and the importance of that balance. So what did you notice about this exercise?
It looked difficult at the beginning,
It looked difficult at the beginning?
but we were a triad.
That's fine.
And once we laid out what we wanted to talk about, it flowed really well.
Good deal.
And it was very well stated by some of our members really well.
How it started out difficult, but once people got started, the flow was very smooth and very well articulated. Did it?
Listening is as important as talking.
I didn't even pay her to say that. Listening is as important as talking. Did anyone find out something new about their neighbor? Just raise your hand if you did. Excellent. You don't have to share it. keep sharing your stories as we go. We're going to move forward, but as we go into coffee hour, by all means, continue to talk with one another, because this is how we build community with our worship of God, but getting to know one another. Thank you very much for sharing your stories.